I'm Andy, 35, and I built my multi-million-dollar tech company from nothing but determination and spite. 10 years ago, my mother stole my $50,000 college fund money my grandfather specifically left for MIT to help my sister buy a house. I ended up homeless, sleeping in my beat-up Honda Civic at 18. Life has a funny way of coming full circle, though. Last month, they came crawling back, desperate for help. The tables had finally turned. Before I dive into my story, let me know where you're watching from. Hit like and subscribe if you've ever had to rebuild your life after someone pulled the rug out from under you. Growing up in suburban Chicago, we looked like the perfect American family from the outside. Our two-story colonial with the white picket fence on Maple Street gave that impression. But appearances can be deceiving, and the dynamics inside our home told a different story. My mom, Patricia, always had a clear favorite, and it wasn't me. She was the kind of mother who attended every one of my sister Melissa's dance recitals with flowers and enthusiastic applause, but would conveniently have a migraine during my science competitions. Even when I won first place at the state level in 8th grade, she managed only a distracted, "That's nice, honey," before turning the conversation back to Melissa's college applications. Dad Richard wasn't much better. He worked 60-hour weeks as an insurance adjuster and came home too exhausted to engage in any family conflict. Whenever tensions rose between Mom and me, he'd retreat behind his newspaper or escape to the garage. "Your mother means well," he'd say, patting my shoulder awkwardly before disappearing. His conflict avoidance was so predictable, it became almost comical, except it wasn't funny when I needed an advocate. Melissa was 4 years older than me and knew exactly how to work the family system to her advantage. She'd put on a sweet face whenever our parents were watching, then whisper cutting remarks when they turned away. "Mom says you were an accident, she told me once when I was 7. Whether it was true didn't matter, the words stung just the same. As we grew older, her manipulation became more sophisticated. She'd borrow my things without asking then, make me feel guilty for wanting them back. "Don't be so selfish, Andy," she'd say with that practice pout that always worked on our parents. The only person who really saw me, was my grandfather Harold. A retired mechanical engineer, he recognized my fascination with computers early on. While my parents were busy fawning over Melissa, Grandpa Harold would take me to computer stores, buy me programming books, and listen patiently as I explained my latest coding project. "You've got a mind for solving problems, Andy." He'd tell me, his eyes crinkling behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Keep developing that talent. It'll take you places." When I was 10, Grandpa Harold passed away from heart failure. At the reading of his will, I learned he'd set aside $50,000 specifically for my college education. I remember the exact words in the will. "To my grandson Andrew, I leave $50,000 to be held in trust until his 18th birthday, specifically for his college education. His remarkable aptitude for technology should be nurtured at the finest institution possible." Even at that young age, I understood the significance of this gift. Grandpa believed in me when no one else did. That money represented not just financial security, but validation proof that someone thought I was worth investing in. After Grandpa's death, I doubled down on my studies. If he believed I could get into a top engineering school, I wouldn't let him down. I joined every science and computer club available, stayed up late, teaching myself programming languages, and maintained a perfect GPA. MIT became my dream. Their computer science program was unparalleled, and I knew that's where I belonged. Meanwhile, the family dynamics continued to deteriorate. Mom's favoritism became even more pronounced without Grandpa's balancing presence. When Melissa needed a car for her 16th birthday, she got a brand new Honda Accord. When my 16th birthday rolled around 2 years later, I received driving lessons and permission to use Mom's old car on weekends if I paid for gas. Dad continued his pattern of emotional absence. He'd work late, come home, eat dinner in silence, then fall asleep in front of the television. On the rare occasions when he engaged, it was usually to enforce one of Mom's decisions. "Your mother knows what's best," became his mantra, absolving himself of responsibility. My sister graduated high school with decent but unremarkable grades and attended the state university, where she majored in communications and spent most of her time at sorority events. She'd come home on weekends with stories of parties and new boyfriends, receiving rapt attention from our parents. My achievements winning the regional coding competition getting published in a youth science journal, were acknowledged with distracted nods. I found refuge in my high school computer lab. Mrs. Bennett, the computer science teacher, recognized my abilities and gave me a key so I could work on projects after hours. "You have a gift, Andy," she told me, echoing my grandfather's words. "Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." Under her mentorship, I developed my first serious application software that helped the school library manage its inventory more efficiently. The principal was so impressed, he implemented it school-wide, saving thousands of dollars in commercial software fees. This small success fueled my determination to attend MIT and eventually start my own software company. As my senior year approached, I began preparing my college applications. I had the grades, the extracurriculars, and the recommendation letters. The only thing I needed was the money Grandpa had left me, money that had been sitting in a trust account for 8 years growing with interest. I calculated it would cover almost 2 years at MIT, and with scholarships and part-time work I could manage the rest. What I didn't know was that while I was planning my future, my family was secretly undermining it. The betrayal that would alter the course of my life was already in motion, orchestrated by the very people who should have been supporting me. Senior year flew by in a flurry of college applications, advanced placement exams, and final projects. By spring, I'd been accepted to several prestigious universities, including my dream school, MIT. The day the acceptance letter arrived, I felt a surge of validation. Grandpa Harold had been right about me all along. I rushed home, clutching the letter with MIT's official seal. For once, I thought even my parents would have to acknowledge my achievement. Mom was in the kitchen making dinner when I burst through the door. "Mom, I got in? I got into MIT?" I waved the letter excitedly. She glanced up from chopping vegetables. "That's nice, honey. Isn't that in Boston, so far away?" Her lukewarm response stung, but I pressed on. "Yeah, it's in Cambridge. I'll need to access Grandpa's college fund now to pay the enrollment deposit. It's due in 2 weeks." A strange expression crossed her face, something between guilt and annoyance. "We should talk about that when your father gets home." That evening, Dad arrived later than usual. Throughout dinner, I noticed my parents exchanging glances. Melissa, who was visiting for the weekend with her boyfriend Travis, dominated the conversation, with stories about their plans to buy a house together, though they'd only been dating for 6 months. Finally, when dinner was over, I brought up MIT again. "So about Grandpa's college fund, I need to access it for the deposit." Dad cleared his throat. "Andy, about that money. There's something we need to discuss." Mom interrupted. "It's not a good time to get into this, Richard. He needs to know Patricia." My stomach tightened. Need to know what? More uncomfortable glances. Dad sighed heavily. "The college fund. It's not available anymore." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What do you mean, not available?" That money was in a trust. For me. For college. Mom's voice took on a defensive edge. "We had to make a difficult decision. Your sister needed help with a down payment on her house. The real estate market is so competitive now, and it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." I looked at Melissa, who suddenly seemed very interested in her fingernails. "You gave my college fund to Melissa for a house down payment." "It wasn't just for her," Mom said quickly. "It's an investment in her future with Travis. They're going to get married soon." Travis shifted uncomfortably in his seat, but said nothing. "But that money was specifically for my education." I protested, my voice rising. "Grandpa left it for MIT." "Your grandfather would have wanted what's best for the family," Mom replied, with infuriating certainty. "Besides, you can just get student loans like everyone else. You're smart. You'll probably get scholarships." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How could you do this without even talking to me? That money was legally mine. Dad finally spoke up. "Technically, the trust was in our names until you turned 18. We made the decision we thought was best." The betrayal was so complete, so calculating, I felt physically ill. I looked at each of their faces. Mom's righteous indignation, Dad's weak guilt, Melissa's deliberate avoidance, and Travis's embarrassed discomfort. "When did this happen?" I demanded. More uncomfortable silence. 3 months ago, Dad finally admitted. 3 months. They'd emptied my college fund 3 months ago, and hadn't even had the decency to tell me. They'd let me continue applying to schools I now couldn't afford to attend. You've known all this time that I couldn't go to MIT, and you didn't say anything. My voice was dangerously quiet now. We were going to tell you, Mom said defensively. We just wanted to wait until you had all your acceptances so you could choose a more affordable option. I laughed bitterly. More affordable MIT gave me the smallest scholarship because they knew about Grandpa's fund. I told them about it in my financial aid application. The full impact hit me then. Without the $50,000, even with my scholarships, MIT was completely out of reach. My dream school gone. My grandfather's dying wish ignored. I pushed away from the table and stormed upstairs to my room. Minutes later, Melissa followed, knocking softly before entering without waiting for a response. Look, Andy, I know you're upset. Upset, I cut her off. You stole my future. She had the audacity to look offended. I didn't steal anything. Mom and Dad made this decision. And anyway, a house is a real investment. College is just 4 years, but real estate appreciates over time. That wasn't your decision to make. That money was left specifically for my education. Melissa rolled her eyes. You're being dramatic. You can go to State University like I did. Their computer program is fine, and you'll graduate without debt. Her dismissiveness was the final straw. Get out of my room. After she left, I sat on my bed trying to process what had happened. On a hunch, I dug through my desk until I found a copy of Grandpa's will that I'd kept. Reading through it again confirmed what I already knew. The money had been explicitly designated for my college education. The next morning, I confronted my parents with the will in hand. This says the money was for my college education. What you did might even be illegal. Mom's face hardened. Are you threatening to sue your own family? Over money? It's not just money. It's my future. It's what Grandpa wanted for me. Dad sighed heavily. Andy, what's done is done. The money's been spent. The house is purchased. There's no going back now. Then help me, I pleaded. Take out a loan. Mortgage the house. Something. We can't do that, Mom said firmly. We're already helping Melissa with her wedding next year. I stared at them in disbelief. The pattern was crystal clear now. Melissa would always come first. My needs would always be sacrificed for hers. In that moment, I made a decision that would change the course of my life. I'm leaving, I said quietly. Don't be ridiculous, Mom scoffed. Where would you go? Anywhere but here. That afternoon I packed everything I could fit into my car, a 15-year-old Honda Civic I'd bought with my own money, from working part-time at the local electronics store. Clothes, my laptop, a few books, and personal mementos were all I could take. As I carried the last box out, Dad caught me by the front door. Andy, don't do this. You're still a kid. I'm 18, I reminded him. Legally an adult. Old enough for you to steal from, apparently. We didn't steal, he began, but I cut him off. Save it. You had a choice, Dad. You could have stood up for me just once. But you didn't. The look of shame on his face gave me no satisfaction as I walked out the door, leaving behind the only home I'd ever known. That first night in my car was surreal. I parked in a Walmart parking lot, having read online that they often allow overnight parking. Reclining the driver's seat as far as it would go, I tried to get comfortable under a thin blanket I'd grabbed from home. The interior light stayed on for a few precious minutes while I pored over my bank statement, $623.14 to my name. The reality of my situation hit me around 3 in the morning when I woke up shivering. April in Chicago might be spring on the calendar, but the night temperatures still dropped into the 40s. I started the car to run the heater for a few minutes, watching the gas gauge anxiously. Every gallon was precious now. By dawn, my back ached from the awkward sleeping position, and my stomach growled with hunger. I brushed my teeth using a water bottle in the parking lot, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy while avoiding eye contact with early morning shoppers. My first priority was finding work, any work. I drove to the local strip mall where a computer repair shop called TechFix had a help wanted sign in the window. The owner, a burly man named Kevin with a salt and pepper beard, looked skeptical when I walked in. You know anything about computers, kid? He asked. I built my own from parts when I was 14, I replied. I can troubleshoot hardware, remove malware, and I know 5 programming languages. Kevin raised an eyebrow, clearly not expecting that answer. He pointed to a laptop on the counter. Customer says it won't boot. Show me what you'd do. 30 minutes later, I diagnosed and fixed a corrupted boot sector issue. Kevin offered me a part-time position on the spot, 15 hours a week at minimum wage. It wasn't much, but it was a start. With the employment problem temporarily solved, I needed to figure out the logistics of living in my car. A quick calculation showed my income wouldn't cover even the cheapest apartment, especially since I needed to save for community college tuition in the fall. I developed a system. $20 a month for a gym membership gave me access to showers. The public library provided free internet and a warm place to spend days when I wasn't working. I bought a small cooler for perishable food and learned which fast food places offered the most calories per dollar. Each night, I'd rotate between different parking lots to avoid drawing attention. 2 weeks after leaving home, I received the official letter from MIT rescinding my financial aid package. They discovered the trust fund no longer existed and recalculated my aid based on my parents' income, which on paper was too high to qualify for significant assistance. Without the fund or additional aid, attending would cost over $50,000 per year, an impossible sum. I cried that night alone in my car behind a grocery store. It was the only time I allowed myself that luxury. The next morning, I applied to the local community college for their fall semester. Their computer science program wasn't MIT, but it was something, and I could afford it with my meager savings and part-time job. May brought warmer weather, but new challenges. My car's air conditioning stopped working, turning the vehicle into a sauna during daytime hours. I couldn't afford repairs, so I suffered through it, spending as much time as possible in air-conditioned public spaces. My health began to deteriorate. Living on a diet of ramen noodles, peanut butter sandwiches, and whatever was on the dollar menu led to constant fatigue. I lost 15 pounds in the first month. Sleep was fragmented and shallow, with every passing car or distant siren jolting me awake. The lowest point came in early June, when my car started making an ominous knocking sound. I pulled into an auto parts store parking lot, my heart racing with panic. My car wasn't just transportation, it was my home. If it broke down, I'd be truly homeless. With trembling hands, I checked the oil and found it dangerously low. I'd been so focused on survival that basic maintenance had slipped my mind. The last of my paycheck went to an oil change and fluid top-up, leaving me with $7 to last until next payday. That week, I skipped meals and collected loose change from parking lots just to afford enough gas to drive to work. By Friday, lightheaded from hunger, I made a desperate call to my Aunt Sarah, my dad's sister, who had always been kind to me. "Andy, sweetie, of course I'll help," she said after I explained my situation carefully, omitting that I was living in my car. "I can send you $100 until you get on your feet." The relief was overwhelming. But 3 hours later, my phone rang. It was my mother. "Your aunt called us," she said, without preamble. "She seems to think you're in some kind of financial trouble." I should have known better. Family loyalty ran deep, just not toward me. "I'm fine," I said stiffly. "This little independent stunt has gone on long enough, Andy. If you're struggling, you can come home. Your room is still there." "With conditions, I'm sure." "Well, of course, with conditions. You'd need to enroll in the state university like we discussed, get a part-time job to contribute to the household, and drop this ridiculous grudge about the trust fund." The audacity was breathtaking. They had stolen my future, and now they wanted to control what was left of it. "No thanks," I said, and hung up. 2 days later, disaster struck. I returned to where I'd parked my car, to find it gone towed. For being in a 2-hour parking zone too long. The impound fee was $185 money I simply didn't have. That night I slept on a bench in the park, my backpack clutched to my chest. The vulnerability was terrifying, every sound making me jerk awake, the fear of being robbed or worse, preventing any real rest. The next morning, disheveled and exhausted, I went to work early. Kevin found me sitting on the doorstep trying to straighten my wrinkled clothes. "You look like hell, kid," he said bluntly. Maybe it was exhaustion, maybe desperation, but something made me tell him the truth, all of it. The stolen college fund, living in my car, the towing disaster. I expected pity or judgment, but Kevin's reaction surprised me. He listened without interruption, then simply said, "My brother-in-law works at the impound lot. Let me make a call." By that afternoon, Kevin had not only arranged to get my car released for half the fee, but also made me an offer that would change everything. "I've got a proposition for you," Kevin said, as we drove back from the impound lot in his pickup truck. My Honda Civic followed behind, driven by his teenage son, who had volunteered to help. "I've been watching you work these past few weeks. You've got serious skills with computers, way beyond what I need for basic repairs." I nodded, unsure where this was going. "My sister has a spare room above her garage. It's nothing fancy, just a bedroom and bathroom, but it's got its own entrance, and she's only charging $300 a month in rent." My heart sank. Even that reduced amount was beyond my means. Kevin must have read my expression. "Here's the deal. I need help expanding the business. I want to offer small business IT support, but I don't have the technical knowledge. You work for me full-time. I'll pay you enough to cover the room plus a little extra, and you help me build this new service line." I stared at him, hardly daring to believe what I was hearing. "You're offering me a job and a place to live." "I'm offering you an opportunity," Kevin corrected. "You've got talent, but you need stability to use it. I need your skills, but can't afford market rate for an IT specialist. We help each other." That night, I moved into the room above Kevin's sister Linda's garage. It was small but clean, with a single bed, dresser, and desk. The luxury of a private shower brought me to tears. Real hot water, without the time limits of the gym. I slept for 12 straight hours. The first uninterrupted sleep I'd had in weeks. The following Monday, I started full-time at TechFix. Kevin paid me $10 an hour, enough to cover rent, food, and save a little for community college. More importantly, he gave me the freedom to develop the business IT services division however I saw fit. I enrolled in community college for the fall semester, taking night classes in computer science. It wasn't MIT, but the professors were knowledgeable and genuinely interested in teaching. One instructor, Professor Marquez, took a special interest in my situation after I completed an advanced programming assignment that went far beyond the requirements. "This is university-level work, Andy," he said, keeping me after class. "Why are you at community college?" I gave him the condensed version of my story. He shook his head in disbelief. "Their loss, our gain. Listen, I consult for several businesses in the area. Would you be interested in some freelance work? Nothing big, just helping customize some database systems." This connection proved invaluable. Professor Marquez introduced me to several small business owners who needed affordable IT solutions. I worked on these projects in the evenings after my shifts at TechFix, often coding until 2 or 3 in the morning. Meanwhile, at TechFix, I identified a significant gap in the local market. While large corporations had IT departments and enterprise-level support, small businesses were left choosing between expensive consultants or inadequate retail computer repair shops. There was no middle ground offering affordable customized IT solutions for small businesses. I pitched an idea to Kevin: create standardized but customizable software packages for small businesses, covering everything from inventory management to point-of-sale systems. We'd charge a reasonable upfront fee, then a small monthly maintenance fee, making quality IT accessible to mom-and-pop operations. Kevin, always quick to recognize opportunity, gave me the green light. "Develop a prototype, and we'll test it with my brother's restaurant." For the next 3 weeks, I worked 18-hour days, creating a restaurant management system that would track inventory, streamline ordering, and generate reports on food costs and profitability. When we installed it at Kevin's brother's Italian restaurant, the results were immediate. Food waste decreased by 20% in the first month, and staff scheduling became more efficient. Word spread quickly. Soon other restaurant owners were calling, asking for similar systems. Kevin and I agreed to split the profits 50-50 on all software sales, separate from my regular salary. My first commission check was for $2,300 more money than I'd ever seen at once. As demand grew, keeping up with both college and our expanding business became impossible. After much deliberation, I made the difficult decision to put college on hold, a choice that felt painfully ironic given everything that had happened. But unlike my parents' decision to repurpose my college fund, this was my choice made with clear eyes and for my future. Kevin supported my decision. College will always be there. This opportunity might not be. With my full attention on the business, we expanded rapidly. I hired Marcus, a fellow community college student with a talent for user interface design, to help refine our software. Kevin secured a small business loan with his house as collateral, allowing us to purchase better equipment and marketing materials. 6 months after joining TechFix full-time, we landed our first major client, a regional grocery chain, with 12 locations. They needed a comprehensive inventory management system that could track thousands of products across multiple stores. The contract was worth $75,000 plus ongoing support fees. The night after signing the contract, Kevin invited me to dinner at his home, a modest 3-bedroom house in a middle-class neighborhood. His wife, Clara, had prepared a celebration feast, and their 2 teenagers joined us at the table. To Andy, Kevin raised his glass, who turned a computer repair shop into a tech company. I felt a lump in my throat. Here was a man who barely knew me 6 months ago, celebrating my success as if it were his own child's achievement. The contrast with my own family couldn't have been more stark. After dinner, Kevin took me into his home office and closed the door. "I've been thinking about the future of the business," he said, uncharacteristically serious. "We've outgrown the TechFix name and location. It's time to establish ourselves properly as a software development and IT consulting firm." I nodded in agreement. We'd been working out of the back of the repair shop, which was becoming increasingly cramped as we added more equipment and personnel. "I found an office space in the business district," Kevin continued. "Nothing fancy but professional enough to impress clients. And I want to rename the company." He slid a piece of paper across the desk. "How does Apex Solutions sound?" The name was perfect aspirational without being pretentious. But what caught my eye was the business structure. Kevin had outlined Kevin Mitchell, 51%, and Andrew Hayes, 49%, partners. I looked up stunned. "You want to make me partner?" Kevin nodded. "You've earned it, kid. I provided the opportunity, but you've created something bigger than both of us. This is just making official what's already true." At 20 years old, less than a year after sleeping in my car, I became co-owner of a promising tech company. The boy whose own family hadn't believed in him enough to honor his grandfather's wishes was now building a future they couldn't have imagined. As I drove back to my apartment that night, I'd upgraded from the garage room to a small 1-bedroom apartment closer to our new office. I felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time: hope. Not just for survival, but for true success on my own terms. 5 years passed in what felt like the blink of an eye. By my 25th birthday, Apex Solutions had transformed from a 2-person operation in the back of a repair shop to a thriving technology company with 30 employees and a sleek office occupying the entire 5th floor of a downtown Chicago building. Our breakthrough came in our 3rd year, when we developed proprietary middleware that allowed different business software systems to communicate seamlessly, solving a massive headache for companies using multiple platforms. The innovation earned us a feature in the Chicago Business Journal and attracted clients from across the Midwest. Kevin remained my mentor and partner, though our roles evolved. He focused on business development and client relationships, while I led our technical team and product development. Our partnership worked because we respected each other's strengths and shared the same values, delivering quality solutions at fair prices. Success brought financial security I'd never imagined possible. My first major personal purchase was a luxury apartment in Lincoln Park, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. After years of cramped spaces and insecurity, the spacious 2-bedroom felt almost excessive, but I savored every square foot. Professional recognition followed the financial rewards. The Chicago Technology Association named me Innovator of the Year when I was 24. Standing on stage accepting the award dressed in a tailored suit that cost more than my entire wardrobe from my car-living days, I thought about how far I'd come. But external success didn't automatically heal internal wounds. Despite therapy sessions with Dr. Harriet, a psychologist who specialized in family trauma, I still struggled with trust issues and the lingering pain of betrayal. I maintained no contact with my family, though occasional updates reached me through distant relatives or old high school friends. I learned my sister Melissa and Travis had gotten married in an elaborate ceremony the year after I left. My parents had apparently taken out a second mortgage to pay for the wedding. 2 years later, they'd had a daughter named Emma. The perfect family narrative continued without me. Kevin and Clara became my surrogate family, including me in holiday celebrations and family milestones. Their children, Aiden and Sophia, looked up to me as a cool uncle figure who knew everything about computers. Their unconditional acceptance helped fill the void my biological family had left. As Apex Solutions grew, so did my commitment to giving back. Remembering my own struggles, I established a scholarship program for underprivileged students pursuing technology degrees. Each year, we funded 10 full scholarships, prioritizing students who, like me, faced financial obstacles despite academic promise. I also became involved with a local youth homelessness organization, both as a donor and volunteer. Few people knew that I'd experienced housing insecurity myself, but it gave me a perspective and empathy that made my contributions more meaningful. On the personal front, I began dating Amanda, the marketing executive we'd hired to expand our brand presence. Brilliant and driven, she understood the demands of building a business and never made me feel guilty for my workaholic tendencies. Our relationship developed slowly, both of us carrying baggage from past experiences, but the foundation was solid. As our company approached its 5th anniversary, Kevin and I received an unexpected email from Technovate, one of the largest software companies in the country. They were interested in acquiring Apex Solutions for $15 million. The offer was tempting. My share would be just over $7 million, enough to never work again if I chose. But after several intense discussions with Kevin, and sleepless nights weighing the options, we declined. We've only scratched the surface of what Apex can become, I explained to the disappointed Technovate executives. We're not ready to hand over the reins. Their counteroffers grew increasingly generous, but our decision remained firm. Apex wasn't just a business to us. It was a creation, almost like a child. We weren't finished raising it yet. Instead of selling, we implemented an employee profit-sharing program, ensuring everyone who helped build the company would benefit from its success. The policy significantly reduced our turnover rate and attracted even more talented professionals to our team. By year 6, my personal net worth crossed the $1 million threshold. The validation was sweet, but money had never been my primary motivation. What I valued most was the independence and security I'd built for myself, a life where I answered to no one and couldn't have the rug pulled out from under me again. Throughout these years of growth and success, I maintained my policy of no contact with my family. I changed my phone number and email address after the first year, tired of periodic guilt trip messages from my mother. As far as I was concerned, that chapter of my life was closed. Then, on an ordinary Tuesday morning, in my 7th year away from home, an email arrived that reopened everything I thought I'd put behind me. The sender was my sister Melissa, and the subject line read simply, "We need to talk." My finger hovered over the delete button. 7 years of silence, and now she needed something. The predictability was almost insulting. But curiosity won out. I opened the message. "Andy, I know you have every reason to delete this without reading. I wouldn't blame you. But things have gotten bad here. Mom is sick. Dad lost his pension in a company bankruptcy. My house is in foreclosure, and Travis left last year. I wouldn't reach out if we weren't desperate. Please, if you still have any feelings for your family at all, we need to talk. Melissa." My first instinct was to ignore it, to continue the life I'd built without them. They hadn't been there for me in my moment of need. Why should I be there for theirs? I forwarded the email to Dr. Harriet with a simple question: "What do you think?" Her response came later that day. "This is ultimately your decision, Andy, but consider whether meeting them would be for their benefit or yours. Closure comes in many forms. Sometimes confronting the past helps us fully release it." After a week of deliberation, I replied to Melissa with a brief message. "I'll be in town next month. We can meet at Mom and Dad's house, the 15th of April, 2 p.m. As the day approached, I prepared myself emotionally for what would likely be a difficult encounter. Amanda offered to accompany me for support, but this was something I needed to do alone. The morning of the meeting, I dressed carefully in a custom-tailored suit, not to flaunt my success, but as armor against the vulnerability I knew I'd feel returning to my childhood home. I drove my Tesla Model S into the familiar suburban neighborhood, noting how little had changed externally while everything had changed within me. As I parked in the driveway of my former home, I took a deep breath and reminded myself that I was no longer the desperate 18-year-old who had driven away in a packed Honda Civic. I was now a successful businessman who had built something meaningful on my own terms. Whatever happened inside that house, I would leave whole. The house looked smaller than I remembered. The white paint faded and peeling in places, the once manicured lawn now patchy and overgrown. I rang the doorbell, feeling oddly like a visitor at what had once been my home. After a long moment, the door opened. My father stood there, and the sight of him shocked me. In 7 years, he had aged 20. His hair was completely gray, his shoulders stooped, his face lined with stress and exhaustion. He stared at me for a moment, recognition dawning slowly. "Andy," he said, his voice catching. "You came." I nodded stiffly. "I said I would." He stepped back to let me enter, and I stepped into my past. The living room was largely unchanged. The same worn furniture, the same faded family photos on the wall. One thing was noticeably different: medical equipment cluttered one corner, including an oxygen tank and various prescription bottles. My mother sat in her recliner, a blanket over her legs, despite the warm spring day. Like my father, she had aged dramatically. Her once carefully maintained appearance had given way to utilitarian practicality, no makeup, hair cut short and gray. A cannula delivered oxygen from the nearby tank. "Andrew," she said formally, as if addressing a stranger. "Thank you for coming." Melissa entered from the kitchen, a young girl of about 4 or 5 trailing behind her. My niece, I presumed Emma. Melissa had changed too, though less dramatically than our parents. Her designer clothes had been replaced by discount store basics, and the confident posture she'd always maintained had yielded to a defensive hunch. "You look good," she said, eyeing my suit and the Rolex on my wrist. "Really good." "Life has been kind," I replied neutrally. An awkward silence fell over the room. 7 years of separation had left us like strangers with shared memories, connected yet distant. "Should we sit?" My father finally suggested, gesturing to the dining table visible through the archway. We moved to the table, my niece staying close to Melissa. Once seated, another uncomfortable silence descended, until my mother broke it. "So you're successful now," she said, her tone difficult to read. "Some sort of computer business." "Software development and IT consulting," I corrected. "We have 32 employees and clients across 12 states. "We?" my father asked. "My business partner, Kevin, and I. He gave me a chance when I needed it most." The implied criticism hung in the air. My mother's lips tightened, but she said nothing. "And you never finished college?" she finally asked, disapproval evident. I couldn't help but laugh at the irony. "No, Mom. The money that was supposed to pay for college went to Melissa's house, the one that's now in foreclosure, apparently." Melissa flinched. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" I challenged. "You're the one who emailed me saying you needed help. So let's get to it. What exactly do you want from me?" My bluntness clearly surprised them. They'd probably expected awkward reconciliation attempts first, perhaps some hesitant catching up. But I hadn't come for a family reunion. My father cleared his throat. "We've run into some financial difficulties." I gathered that much from Melissa's email. "What kind of difficulties?" He explained haltingly. The company he'd worked for had gone bankrupt 3 years ago, terminating his pension in the process. At 62, he'd been unable to find comparable work, and now worked part-time at a hardware store. Mom had been diagnosed with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease 2 years ago, requiring expensive medications and reducing her to part-time work as a school secretary before she had to stop working entirely. Melissa's story came next. Travis had left her and Emma 18 months ago, providing minimal child support. The mortgage on the house, the one purchased with my college fund, had an adjustable rate that had skyrocketed. She was now 6 months behind on payments with foreclosure proceedings underway. I tried everything, she insisted, tears welling in her eyes. Second job, refinancing, even a loan modification. Nothing worked. I listened without comment, noting that none of them had actually apologized for what they'd done to me. They were explaining their problems, not acknowledging their role in mine. "So what exactly are you asking for?" I finally said when they finished. They exchanged glances before my mother spoke. "We thought, given your circumstances, you might be able to help us." "My circumstances," I repeated flatly. "You mean the success I achieved after you stole my college fund and forced me into homelessness?" "We didn't force," my mother began, but I cut her off. "Let me tell you about my circumstances. After I left this house," I said, my voice dangerously calm, "I lived in my car for 3 months. I showered at a gym and used the public library for internet. I ate 1 meal a day to save money. My car got towed once, and I had to sleep on a park bench because I couldn't afford the impound fee." Their faces registered shock. Clearly, they'd imagined I'd gone to a friend's house or found an apartment somehow. "You slept in your car," my father repeated, horror dawning on his face. "Where did you think I went?" I asked. "You knew I had $600 to my name. Where exactly did you think I was living?" "We thought you were staying with friends," my mother said weakly. "You always had those computer club friends." "None of whom had space for a permanent house guest," I said. "So yes, I slept in my car in various parking lots around the city. I worked minimum wage at a computer repair shop and saved every penny for community college tuition because someone had stolen the money my grandfather left, specifically for my education." Melissa's eyes dropped to the table. "We didn't know." "You didn't want to know," I corrected. "And you certainly never asked." My father looked genuinely distressed. "Andy, I'm so sorry. We should have done more to make sure you were okay." It was the first genuine apology I'd heard, and it took some of the edge off my anger. But my mother was still defensive. "You chose to leave," she insisted. "We would have supported you if you'd stayed and gone to state university as we suggested." "On your terms," I reminded her. "After you'd already proven I couldn't trust you." Emma, who had been quietly playing with a doll in the corner, suddenly approached the table. "Are you my Uncle Andy?" she asked, looking at me with innocent curiosity. "Mommy says you're really smart with computers." The simple question diffused some of the tension. "Yes, I am," I replied, softening my tone. "It's nice to meet you, Emma." She smiled shyly before returning to her doll. The brief interaction shifted something in the room's atmosphere. Melissa seized the opportunity to redirect the conversation. "Look, Andy, we know we hurt you. What we did with the college fund was wrong, but we're really struggling now, and we didn't know where else to turn. I studied them, my family by birth, if not by choice. They were clearly in dire straits, but their expectation that I would simply write a check after everything that had happened struck me as profoundly entitled." "What exactly do you want from me?" I asked again, more specifically, this time. They exchanged glances before my father spoke. "We need about $60,000 to save Melissa's house from foreclosure, and your mother's medical expenses are about $3,000 a month not covered by insurance." I almost laughed at the irony. The $50,000 college fund that had been taken from me had now grown into a $60,000 request plus ongoing medical expenses. "So you want me to give you money?" I said flatly. "After everything that happened, you reached out because you need money." "It's not just about the money," my mother protested, but we all knew that was exactly what it was about. I sat back in my chair considering my options. I could simply write them a check. The amount they needed was insignificant to me now. I could refuse entirely and walk away again. Or I could find a third path. "I have a counterproposal," I said finally. They leaned forward, anticipation mingling with apprehension on their faces. I'd spent the week before this meeting considering what I would do if they asked for financial help. The easy answer would have been vengeful refusal. Let them face the consequences of their actions as I had faced mine. But that path offered no growth, only the hollow satisfaction of retribution. "I won't be giving you cash." I began watching their expressions fall. "But I am willing to help on certain conditions." I outlined my terms clearly. For Melissa, I would speak with the executives at a partner company that needed a communications specialist. If she passed the interview process on her own merits, She could earn a salary sufficient to restructure her mortgage, assuming she completed the financial counseling program I would pay for. It's not a handout, I explained. It's an opportunity, the same thing Kevin gave me when I was at my lowest. What you do with it is up to you. For my parents, I offered to cover my mother's medical expenses directly and help my father find more suitable employment through my business network. The condition was non-negotiable. They would attend family therapy sessions with me to address the patterns of favoritism and conflict avoidance that had fractured our family. I'm not interested in paying your bills while maintaining the same dysfunctional relationship, I told them. If you want my help, we need to address the root issues. My mother's face tightened with indignation. You're using our situation to force us into therapy. That's manipulative, Andrew. No more manipulative than using my college fund to buy Melissa a house, I countered evenly. I'm offering help with conditions attached, just as you offered to let me stay here with conditions attached 7 years ago. Melissa, more pragmatic than our mother, nodded slowly. It's fair, she admitted. More than fair, actually. My father reached for my mother's hand. Patricia, we need to consider this. Andy's offering real help, just not in the way we expected. It's humiliating, she muttered. More humiliating than sleeping in a car. At 18, I asked quietly. More humiliating than showering at a gym and counting quarters to buy food. The question hung in the air, unanswerable. My mother looked away, but I saw the first crack in her defensive armor, a flash of genuine shame in her eyes. Let me be clear, I continued. I'm not doing this to punish you or to lord my success over you. I'm offering the kind of help that addresses the real problems, not just the symptoms. Emma wandered over again, climbing into Melissa's lap. The sight of my niece, innocent and unaware of the complex dynamics at play, reinforced my determination to break the cycle of dysfunction. She deserved better than to grow up in a family defined by favoritism and financial instability. After a long silence, my father spoke. We accept your terms, Andy, all of them. My mother started to protest, but he cut her off with uncharacteristic firmness. No, Patricia. Andy's right. Getting a check wouldn't solve anything in the long run. We need to fix the real issues. The year that followed was challenging, but transformative. Melissa excelled in her new position. Her natural communication skills, finding purpose in a structured corporate environment. With her improved income and the financial counseling I'd arranged, she negotiated a loan modification that saved her house. My parents were slower to change. The family therapy sessions revealed decades of dysfunctional patterns, my mother's preference. For Melissa, stemming from her own childhood, as the overlooked sibling, my father's conflict avoidance, rooted in his parents' HATF, volatile relationship. Understanding these origins didn't excuse their behavior, but it helped explain it. 3 months into therapy, my mother finally offered the apology I'd been waiting for. Not a qualified "I'm sorry," statement, but a genuine acknowledgement of the harm she'd caused. I failed you as a mother, she said, tears streaming down her face. I was so focused on making sure Melissa had everything I didn't have as a child that I couldn't see I was doing to you exactly what my parents did to me. I'm truly sorry, Andy. The apology didn't instantly heal our relationship, but it opened the door to authentic communication. Slowly, visit by visit, we rebuilt a connection, not the idealized parent-child relationship of greeting cards, but a realistic one between flawed adults trying to do better. My father found purpose managing a small hardware store owned by one of my business contacts. The position suited his experience and allowed him dignity while accommodating my mother's medical appointments. For her part, my mother began volunteering at a literacy program when her health permitted, finding fulfillment in helping others. Melissa and I developed something approaching a sibling relationship for the first time. Without our parents' favoritism poisoning the dynamic, we discovered common ground and even a similar sense of humor. Through her, I developed a relationship with Emma, taking my role as uncle seriously. Kevin and Clara welcomed my biological family to holiday gatherings with remarkable grace, creating a blended family environment that would have seemed impossible years earlier. Watching Kevin and my father discuss fishing techniques, while Clara and my mother exchanged recipes, I felt a sense of completion I hadn't known I was missing. The journey from sleeping in my car to building a multi-million-dollar business had taught me invaluable lessons about resilience, self-reliance, and the power of opportunity. But the harder journey from bitter estrangement to cautious reconciliation taught me equally important lessons about forgiveness, boundaries, and the complexity of human relationships. I discovered that forgiveness wasn't about excusing actions or pretending harm hadn't occurred. It was about freeing myself from the weight of resentment and making peace with an imperfect reality. My family would never be the idealized version I'd wanted as a child, but they could be something authentic if we all committed to growth. Similarly, I learned that success wasn't just measured in dollars or achievements. True success included emotional well-being, meaningful relationships, and the ability to transform personal pain into purpose, like the scholarship program that now helped dozens of students avoid the hardships I'd faced. Perhaps most importantly, I realized that breaking cycles of dysfunction required conscious choice and constant vigilance. The patterns that had damaged our family had developed over generations. Changing them demanded awareness, commitment, and sometimes uncomfortable honesty. Today, 10 years after I drove away from my childhood home with nothing but a car full of possessions and wounded pride, I lead a life I could never have imagined in those dark days. Apex Solutions continues to thrive now with over 100 employees. Amanda and I are engaged planning a future together built on mutual respect and shared values. My relationship with my family remains a work in progress, stronger in some ways because we've faced our dysfunction honestly, yet permanently altered by our shared history. We maintain clear boundaries and realistic expectations, understanding that healthy relationships require ongoing effort from all sides. The $50,000 that was taken from me, the catalyst for my journey, seems almost insignificant now compared to what I gained: resilience, independence, and eventually a more authentic relationship with myself and others. The betrayal that once defined my life became merely one chapter in a much larger story. If you're facing your own family betrayal or seemingly insurmountable obstacle, remember this: rock bottom can become a foundation on which to build something extraordinary. Your lowest moment doesn't define you, what you do next does. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after betrayal? How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments below. If my journey resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories of overcoming adversity. Thanks for listening, and remember, sometimes the greatest success comes after our biggest disappointments. Wishing you strength and resilience on your own journey.